Most people believe that if they want something badly enough, if they desire it with enough intensity, and if they keep visualizing or repeating affirmations over and over again, eventually they'll get it. But here's the truth that turns everything upside down. Wanting something has nothing to do with receiving it. In fact, wanting often creates more distance between the person and the thing they desire. Because wanting is actually a state of lack. It's rooted in the assumption that something is missing, that something hasn't shown up yet, and that something needs to change. And when that's the internal state, when the dominant feeling is one of absence, life mirrors it with more absence, more waiting, more situations that confirm the thing is not yet yours. This is the part that's hard to accept, because it means the whole struggle to get something was never about effort or technique. It's not about how many affirmations someone does in a day or how long they can sit and visualize. It's about who they are being internally, what they are truly conscious of being. Because the law of consciousness, the principle Neville Goddard taught so clearly, is that we do not attract what we want. We attract what we are. We experience what we are conscious of being. So if someone is conscious of being in lack, of being alone, of being unwanted, of being unlucky, then no matter what they say or do, their outer world will match that inner atmosphere. It doesn't matter if they're saying all the right words. If the feeling underneath those words is fear or insecurity or desperation, then those feelings are the seeds being planted, and those are the results that must eventually grow. It's a difficult truth, but it's a freeing one too, because it means no one is a victim of their circumstances. Life isn't happening to them randomly. It's responding to the state they live in. And this is why so many people keep experiencing the same patterns again and again, even though they think they're doing everything right. They haven't shifted who they are on the inside. They haven't assumed the new state. They're still checking for signs, still worrying it won't happen, still looking outside themselves for proof. But the outer world never leads, it only follows. It's the shadow of the inner state. So if the outside keeps repeating unwanted scenarios, that's not failure. That's feedback. It's a mirror showing exactly what's still being assumed internally. And this is where the power really lies. Not in effort, not in force, but in awareness. The question isn't how can I make it happen? The real question is what am I being? Because the moment the state changes, the outer world has no choice but to follow. That's the law. That's how manifestation really works, not through striving, but through being. It's easy to believe that something is blocking a desire, some external force, some complicated subconscious trauma, or maybe even a universal delay. But most of the time, the only real blockage is this, staying conscious of the problem instead of the solution. And that happens so subtly, so automatically, that people don't even realize they're doing it. They wake up thinking about what's missing. They go through the day analyzing why things haven't shifted, and they fall asleep trying to figure out what they need to fix. All of that may look like dedication, but underneath it's just fear in disguise. Fear that what's wanted won't happen, fear that they're doing something wrong, and fear that they're going to lose the one thing they care about most. The mind gets obsessed with fixing the old story. It wants to solve it, untangle it, and understand it. But in doing so, it keeps the attention wrapped around the very thing that's not wanted. And what people don't realize is that attention is creative. Wherever attention goes, energy flows, and reality begins to shape itself accordingly. So when the majority of focus is on what's going wrong, or on the absence of what's desired, that focus becomes a signal to the subconscious mind, this is what matters. This is who I am. And the subconscious, being completely obedient and non-judgmental, delivers more of that same experience. That's why so many people, especially those who are trying to manifest relationships, end up talking more about the problems than the actual desire. Ask them what they want, and instead of hearing a clear, grounded answer like peace or love or connection, they start listing all the things that aren't working. They go into stories about miscommunication, rejection, bad timing, or what the other person said or didn't say. And even when they try to end that list with a positive statement like I just want it to work out, the dominant vibration has already been set. It's rooted in lack. The focus was never truly on the end. It was on the current reality, dressed up in spiritual words. And the most humbling part is this: the universe doesn't respond to words. It responds to states. Someone can say they want connection, but if internally they're living in fear, waiting for a message, checking for signs, analyzing every conversation, they are not in the state of connection. They are in the state of separation. And that's what gets reflected back. This is why Neville Goddard emphasized again and again, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That doesn't mean to pretend or fake it. It means to genuinely move into the feeling, into the knowing that what is wanted is already done, already true, already real. The outer world is not punishing anyone. It's not withholding anything. It's simply responding to consciousness. And until that internal shift happens, until someone becomes the version of themselves who already has what they want, life can only echo the current identity. But the moment that shift happens, even subtly, even quietly, everything begins to move. Not because a technique was mastered, but because the state of being changed. And that's where manifestation begins. Not in words, not in rituals, but in being. There's a silent pattern that shows up in almost everyone's manifestation journey, and it's so sneaky that most don't even realize it's happening. It goes something like this. Someone becomes aware of what they want. They start doing all the right things, visualizing, affirming, scripting, and for a few days or even weeks, it feels like things are shifting. There's hope, there's momentum, there's a sense of excitement. But then something happens. A trigger, a doubt, a lack of movement in the 3D world. And that's when the old self sneaks back in. Without realizing it, the mind starts looking for proof again. It begins checking whether things are working. It starts analyzing, rereading old messages, comparing, waiting, wondering, and slowly, silently, it slips back into the state of not having. And this is exactly how the old story keeps repeating itself. Not because manifestation is broken, not because the desire is too big, and not because something outside is stopping it, but simply because the internal state has not changed in a permanent way. The person is still trying to change the world from the same place of fear they always lived in. They haven't crossed the bridge mentally. They're still standing at the same point, just hoping life will change first so they can feel better. But life doesn't work that way. Reality doesn't bend to the old state. It bends to the new one. And here's the thing. Many people have already felt the truth of this, even if they didn't fully understand it. They've had moments, brief flashes, where they were so deeply convinced of the end, so settled into the knowing that their desire was already theirs, that something actually shifted. Maybe they got a sign. Maybe they felt peaceful for the first time in days. Or maybe something just clicked and felt easy. But then fear crept in. The mind started whispering, what if it doesn't happen? And instead of standing firm in the new state, they wavered, they checked, they doubted, and the old pattern returned like clockwork. Not because the universe said no, but because they returned to being who they were before the assumption. This is why Neville said, no matter what the senses dictate, because the moment someone trusts their senses over their assumption, they fall out of the state. They stop living in the end and start reacting to the middle. And reacting to the middle only recreates more middle. It delays the end. It keeps the person stuck in a loop where the desire is always almost here, but never quite arrives. This isn't to blame anyone. It's just to bring clarity. The outer world has no power on its own. It only plays the role that the inner world gives it. So if the same fears, same doubts, and same reactions keep showing up, that's not a sign of failure, it's a sign that the identity has not shifted. The desire is not missing. The version of self that already has it just hasn't been chosen fully. And until that version becomes the dominant self, the old story will keep getting replayed, not because it's real, but because it's familiar. There's something so subtle and dangerous about how the mind works. It convinces people that by analyzing the problem, they're solving it. It tricks them into believing that constantly thinking about what went wrong, what's not working, or what they're afraid of will somehow help them figure things out. But all that really happens is this: the problem gets fed. It gets more attention, more emotional energy, more airtime in the subconscious. And the longer someone stays focused on what they don't want, even if it's under the illusion of trying to fix it, the more they anchor themselves in the state of not having. It shows up so clearly when someone is asked a simple question, what do you want? Most people don't give a direct answer. They start by listing everything they don't want. They talk about how things used to be, how they're not getting what they deserve, how they feel stuck, confused, hurt, or frustrated. And then, maybe after all that, they'll say something like, I just want peace, or I just want it to work. But by that point, the focus has already been placed squarely on the unwanted, and that's where the energy goes. That's the state they're living in. People think they're manifesting their desire, but really, they're just recycling their pain. They wake up with it, carry it through the day, talk about it, affirm over it, journal around it, and all of it still comes from the same root, I don't have it yet. And that root, that subtle inner stance, becomes the cause of every delayed desire. Because manifestation doesn't respond to effort. It responds to alignment. And if someone is aligned with the feeling of lack, the universe has no choice but to mirror that lack back. It's like planting a seed and then digging it up every day to check if it's growing. Not only does that stop the growth, it kills the process altogether. The same is true with assumptions. Once someone has claimed their end, it has to be left alone. It has to be trusted, assumed as done, not picked apart with logic or fear. But that's hard when the senses are screaming the opposite. When there's no call, no movement, no shift. That's when people panic and start trying to force it, obsessing over how to fix it, rather than stepping back and realizing the obsession is what's creating the delay. The only solution is a mental shift, a radical decision to stop feeding the problem with attention, and instead begin living from the solution, not toward it, from it, as if it's already done, already handled, already in motion. That doesn't mean faking it with empty words. It means deeply, inwardly claiming the state of peace, the state of love, the state of resolution, and refusing to be swayed by what the senses say. Neville was clear. To be conscious of being poor while praying for riches is to be rewarded with poverty. That's not punishment, it's precision. The law is exact. Whatever someone is conscious of being, they must experience, not because they're doing it wrong, but because they haven't yet become the version of themselves who no longer needs the desire. They already are it. And until that shift is made, all the effort in the world won't create the change. Only being does. One of the most powerful ideas in manifestation is this simple truth. Living in the end means living as if your desire is already fulfilled. It's not about hoping for something to happen later or trying to convince yourself it will. It's about stepping fully into the state of having, feeling, and being what you want right now, this very moment. When someone truly lives in the end, their entire mental and emotional landscape shifts. Their thoughts, feelings, and actions start aligning with the reality they want to create, and that alignment becomes the invisible force that draws the desired experience into their life. But living in the end is harder than it sounds because it requires more than just imagining or daydreaming. It requires a deep, unwavering belief that what's wanted is already real, even if the outer world says otherwise. This means that no matter what circumstances look like, no matter how the senses report the present moment, the inner state remains consistent. That consistency creates a magnetic field that transforms reality, not by forcing or struggling, but by being the cause instead of the effect. The challenge is that many people try to manifest from a place of not having. They want the relationship, the money, the success, but their thoughts are tangled with doubts, fears, and stories of why it hasn't shown up yet. They think about the obstacles, the setbacks, and the reasons they might fail. And that kind of focus only strengthens the current reality. It keeps the mind busy on the problem, which is like watering a weed and hoping a flower grows. Until someone stops giving attention to the lack and shifts into the feeling of having, the manifestation will continue to be out of reach. Neville Goddard's teaching to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled is not just a suggestion, it's a principle rooted in how consciousness works. When you assume the feeling, you create a state that your subconscious accepts as reality. The subconscious cannot distinguish between what's imagined and what's real. It simply acts on what it believes to be true. So if you walk, talk, and feel like you already have the love, success, or peace you desire, your subconscious mind starts aligning your actions, habits, and decisions with that reality. Slowly, but surely, your outer world begins to reflect that internal state. This means that the most important work is done in the mind and heart. It's not about changing the outside world first and then feeling good. It's about changing the inside world first and letting the outside follow. This can feel counterintuitive because most people believe their reality depends on external conditions. But the truth is the exact opposite. External conditions depend on internal conditions. When you live in the end, you're living from a higher level of consciousness. You're not reacting to circumstances, you're creating them. Living in the end also means trusting the process, even when there's no immediate evidence of change. It means quieting the mind's urge to check for signs or proofs and instead holding steady in the knowing that your desire is already yours. This kind of faith is not blind. It's a practical, grounded faith based on experience and understanding of how consciousness shapes reality. And it's what separates those who manifest quickly from those who stay stuck in the waiting game. Manifestation is not a game of wishful thinking or hoping that the universe will fix everything on its own. It's a personal responsibility, a deep, inner commitment to becoming the doer of your own life. Too often, people treat manifestation like a magic trick they're waiting to see happen, forgetting that the real magic is in how they choose to think, feel, and act every day. The law of assumption that Neville Goddard teaches is simple but powerful. Whatever you assume to be true becomes your reality. So, if you want to change your life, you have to change what you assume about yourself and your situation. This is not about forcing or struggling, but about consciously deciding who you are in relation to your desire. Taking responsibility means looking honestly at yourself and recognizing what you are truly conscious of being. Are you living as someone who already has what they want? Or are you still caught in old beliefs that say you're lacking, unworthy, or not ready? This self-awareness is key because it shows where your mind is focused and where your energy is going. No one else can tell you what you're conscious of, only you can feel it deep down. And the moment you realize you're holding onto a state that doesn't serve you, you open the door to change. It's a choice, not a condition. Being the doer means you don't just listen to teachings or repeat affirmations without feeling them. You don't just say I'm manifesting and wait passively for it to happen. Instead, you actively step into the new state, feeling, thinking, and acting as the person who already has what they desire. You create new mental habits, you guard your thoughts, you refuse to dwell on problems, and you practice living from the end every day. This isn't always easy, especially when old fears and doubts want to pull you back. But persistence is the secret. The more you keep assuming the new reality, the more it becomes your natural state, and the quicker your outer world will catch up. Remember, manifestation isn't about the outside changing first, it's about the inside changing first. When you become the doer, you're no longer a passive receiver but an active creator. You align your inner world with the desire and let the outer world follow. The shift is what breaks the cycle of disappointment and brings real, lasting change. It's about trusting yourself, trusting the principle, and taking inspired action when it feels right, not forcing, but flowing with the knowing that you already are what you want to be. Neville said, "Do not think what you do not want." That's more than just advice. It's a call to take control of your consciousness. What you think about, feel, and imagine shapes your reality. So be vigilant. Be kind to yourself, but be honest. Keep examining your state, adjust it when needed, and commit to living as the version of yourself who no longer struggles but thrives in the reality you've chosen. The power is already in your hands. It's time to step up and be the doer. Manifestation isn't about waiting for something to happen. It's about becoming the person who already has what they want. It starts with taking responsibility for what you're truly conscious of being and choosing to live from that place every day. Stop focusing on what you don't want and begin to feel, think, and act like your desire is already yours. The power to change your reality is in your hands. Become the doer, not just the dreamer. If this message resonates with you, drop a comment below and share what new reality you're ready to step into. I will meet you with another golden nugget. Happy manifesting.